Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is a mobile app developer and a fellow podcaster. Please welcome Casey Daniel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, the pleasure's mine, as always. Thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast. I know that we actually scheduled this ages in advance, and it's funny. One of the things I'm learning with doing a podcast is that just because you have something penciled in and that someone is, due to actually appear on the podcast, that doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, so, especially when you do like a week and a half out in advance.
Yeah, I've had so many
in the
times.
Middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, it is funny actually that I'd say the vast majority of people that actually get in touch or express an interest are, good on their word. Like if nothing else, if they can't make it, maybe they'll, I don't know, agree to do something later or, whatever the case may be. But I am learning through this that there are a lot of people that don't do that. Sometimes they never get in touch, which to me is bizarre because
yes,
you know what I mean? It's fine if you can't. You just say, hey, sorry, something came up.
Yeah. Don't leave me hanging.
Yeah, no, for real. Like it's kind of sad in a way. Sometimes I'll get there, and it's not just for my show either. So obviously I do a lot of podcast appearances as we all need to promote ourselves, right? And I'll just be sitting there waiting, and then it gets to I don't know, half an hour before, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, can't do it." What? I'm ready. I'm sitting here. I've pumped myself full of coffee. I'm ready to go.
Right?
Nothing. You're giving me nothing. God damn it.
Exactly.
But anyway, you're here. You made the effort. So I thank you for that.
Absolutely no worries. I've done a few guests. Excuse me. Sorry, something in my throat. I've done a few guests and I've had a blast doing it. It's always fun just to have a conversation and meet new people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite things to do. I mean, for my podcast, it's largely the interviews, and then I also have a co-host that I do long topic stuff with and conversations with, and occasionally I'll do just me talking. But I got to say, the interviews are the best part. It's always different, and I think it really helps, in terms of building your conversational skills. Being able to sustain a conversation and just hold it. I never really thought about that, when I started, prepping for interviews, but it is what it is. Since we're on the topic of podcast, actually, let's just dive into that. How, with the guests that you have on your show, how do you kind of approach that? How do you keep a conversation going? Because obviously I can talk for ages about how I do it, but I want to know how you do it.
I actually haven't started recording yet. That's a bit of a confession right there. I'm waiting for one of my co-hosts to get some equipment in, with everyone ordering online right now. That's a bit of a mess. So, so unfortunately we haven't had a chance to start recording, but like I said, I've done several guests, and I don't know. I think the key is don't cut the conversation short if it's going somewhere. Don't pressure yourself to move on to the next topic. Just, I have a terrible habit of not finishing my sentences. So
okay. I was expecting
that's a terrible habit. I need to stop, and I catch myself frequently doing it. I just kind of trail off as my thought moves on to random things. But
okay, I'll try and catch you with that then. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, I think for me, I've never obviously been in the habit of cutting people off or stopping a train of thought. I mean, because if the conversation's going, it's great. I mean, one of the things I've actually started to do more now is I always do the same research that I always do. So I have questions just in case there is ever an instance where, I don't know, maybe you meet someone, they're less conversational, they're shy, whatever the case may be, and you've purely got to rely on your questions, right? And a lot of the time I use this as kind of like something to fall back on, I guess, and to sort of guide it. I kind of write it in such a way that it kind of guides you through. But at the same time, like you said, it's important to kind of let the guest take the reins as much as you can, and just throw in an ad lib. Like most of the time I try to get the person talking and then I just shut up and listen.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously, yeah, this is what I actually have in my notes now that I'm looking again. You're about to start a podcast, and it's on real app development. So talk us through kind of what people you expect to kind of have on the show, what people can expect to learn by listening to this podcast. Like, why should people listen to your podcast?
Yeah. So what I kind of want to do is create a podcast that focuses on how mobile apps are actually made. There's a lot of content out there that shows you the basics of programming and getting an app together, and then they show you all the puzzle pieces. But nobody shows you how the puzzle pieces work together. And especially if you're just starting out, that can actually be really, really challenging. And so my goal is to put content out into the world that kind of shows how these puzzle pieces work together. I've started a blog where I'm creating a podcast listening app, and I'm open sourcing it and doing a blog series of here's why I'm making the decisions I'm making, and here's how these two pieces work together, because I think this is how it should work. And it's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested by this app. It's described as being like an open sourced podcast app. Like, what exactly is that, and like, what can people sort of do with that app?
Yeah, so it's in early stages right now, but it'll be just a standard podcast listening app. Okay. But the difference is, if you're a developer, you can go in and view exactly what makes the app. All of the source code is open and freely available, so you can download the code, make changes you want, and run it yourself if you really wanted to.
Oh, so it's kind of like an app template for podcasts, essentially.
It's not an app. It's not a template per se. It's a full app,
like an interface.
It's going to be downloadable on your phone, and you can listen to a podcast just like you can on every other app on your phone. Mm-hmm. But the difference is you can actually see the guts of it.
Okay.
So all of the code I'm making, everything that's going into the app is free and public. So awesome. You can view the app for all of the source code, and if you know what you're doing, you can go in and say, I want to make this change for me. And you can make it your change and run it for yourself.
Cool. It's like a good starting point for people that maybe just getting into that, but aren't sort of fully kind of there as far as understanding coding and stuff like that. Cool. Yeah. Cool. All right. So bringing it back to your podcast, what are your sort of goals and aspirations for your podcast? Let's say short term and then long term.
Short term, I'm really interested in seeing where it goes. I haven't quite decided on a format because, I want to have some guests that bring in expert functionality. Like, there's topics I want to talk about, like security. How do you secure an app? What is good enough? Because it's never going to be perfect. But there's a point where you have to step back and say, okay, what is good enough security? Do I need to keep adding more security for the sake of it, or is what I have going to be enough? And there's a topic that has a lot of opinions, and I would love to bring someone on and talk about that for a while. But I also want to talk, how do indie developers market their applications? Talk a lot about those kind of stories as well. Long term, I would like it to become a show that people look to for information, that people listen to stay up to date on their skills, because that's something that's really hard as a developer. Is there's the landscape is always changing very quickly, and you only have so much time a day to keep up, and so just be a source of high level information on what the entire mobile landscape is.
Okay, great. And do you have like a working name for the podcast just yet?
Yeah, it's Who's Your Dev?
Who's Your Dev? I like that. As far as when it will be available, I presume it's probably going to be next year, but do you have like a rough date in mind of when you can expect it to be available?
Early January.
Cool. Maybe the first week then, something like that. Yeah. Awesome. And where do we reckon we'll be able to listen to this podcast? Is it going to be video only or audio only, or?
It's probably going to be audio only. It'll be, we're hoping to go on to the standard Apple and Spotify, as well as we'll have our own website, who'syourdev.com.
Uh-huh. Oh, so are you going to do this as a whole kind of operation in the sense that the content available on your podcasts will be available on the website in like article information form? Is that kind of what you're going for, or is it just an company website to promote it?
It's going to start off as mostly a website to promote it, and a website to, we'll have embedded listeners so you can listen to it on the website,
right?
As well as contact us. I think that's the real reason we want a website, is a space to be able to start dialogue with people. But I'm not opposed to doing written articles if the content requires it. Something I want to look at, I have ordered one of the new Macs with the Apple chips. And so, that's probably going to be a post of itself, of comparing its performance and all of that fun stuff.
Cool. Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, certainly, I think we'll all be looking out for that podcast. It sounds interesting. It's a bit above my kind of mindset, but
that's completely fair.
I know a lot of people that would be into this, and I think it's that kind of thing of it is good to have like a resource available for beginners and intermediates, because obviously there's a lot of people out there that just know what they're doing. They've been studying it for many years, but it's good to have something where if you're not too sure, you can kind of refer to it and over time build your knowledge, or at least use it as like a resource in the beginning. So
and that's exactly it. And it really is puzzle pieces that nobody shows you how they go together, because there's so many libraries and frameworks and tidbits of information here and there scattered throughout the internet. And I've sat there for hours going, how do these two things fit together? Driven me absolutely mad.
Well, listen, best of luck with it. I'm sure it's going to go very well. I think the open source podcast app idea is a fantastic idea. I think, I've seen similar concepts in different industries, and I think it's always good to have something that you can use in the very beginning, just as a kind of like, how can I put this? Something to kind of like tide you over before you decide what to do, like whether it's building your own infrastructure and having your own, internally operated system, or, eventually maybe hiring someone and having like, like an interface that you kind of customize, but ultimately is managed by like a third party or something. Like whatever you choose, like it's good to have something to start off with that's sort of relatively simple to use, or at least replicate.
Well, and like the goal isn't for someone to make their own podcast app based off of mine. The goal is to, there's pieces that go into it, like how to do user authentication, how to sign in a user, how to listen to audio, how do you display multiple pieces of content that are dependent in, like when you hit the play pause button in one screen, it needs to play pause in all of the screens. How do you hook that up? How do you manage all of that state? How do you, like, there's so many concepts that go into an app that if you don't provide greater context of like how do you do it in a larger application, can actually be really difficult to figure out. And so I'm creating blog posts being like, today we're doing the user onboarding. Here's all the decisions that here's all the reasons why I'm using these packages in this way to create this.
Excellent. Let's move it forward and talk a little bit more about you being a mobile app developer. So what are some of the apps that you've worked on, and which ones are you most proud of?
So there's two apps I'm going to highlight. So my last job was working for a hearing aid company called Unitron, and I made mobile apps to remotely control the hearing aids. And that was a lot of challenging, but a lot of fun too.
Wow. How does that work?
So it uses Bluetooth to connect. And so obviously you can adjust volume. But there's a ton of other things you can adjust as well. So there's the concept of sound profiles. So the way the audio needs to be amplified for a conversation like we're having is completely different when you're in your car because you don't want to hear all the engine noises, or versus a club where everything is pumping. And so your hearing aid will try to automatically adjust all of these settings on the fly for you, but you can go in and say, no, I'm in a crowded restaurant. Let's just focus that for a little bit.
I sense there could be a bit of an issue here, like if it automatically adjusts in such a way that, do you know what I mean? Like if there's like an unfortunate incident where it's like the sound is very sharp at that particular time, that could overwhelm you maybe. I don't know if it works.
It very well could, and it tends to err on the side of not doing that.
Okay.
So it's more a situation of it thinks I'm in quiet. It thinks I'm in loud, but I'm really in quiet. I need it to amplify a little bit more. So like you can adjust that. And then right now I'm working for a startup called My Normative.
Okay. That's a bit
so
more
the
about
app
that.
the app is releasing in Canada on March 8th. And what it is it's a fitness app for women to help contextualize health. Because if you download any fitness tracking app right now, if you're a woman, it assumes you're 75% of a man.
What do you mean?
And that's just so like when it says you burned 100 calories, that's 75% of what of the amount of calories a man would have burned.
Okay, so it's comparison. It's like comparing to like a male.
That's what all the apps do right now.
Oh, okay.
But that's just simply not how biology works.
Right.
So we're looking to contextualize their health and their fitness in relation with where they are in their reproductive cycle or their reproductive stage, and help provide contextual information to help you understand your health and understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling today, because you deserve that information.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like something that would be very, very successful. I mean, obviously, women are very health conscious, and well, I suppose we all are, but like, it does kind of seem that women especially are, and maybe that's a product of society. I don't know. That's a different conversation entirely. But this does kind of sound like an app that would really help people in that regard, I think.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Talk us through sort of the process of creating a mobile app in sort of layman's terms.
Yeah, so the process is really it's a surprisingly creative process. When you start coding, you learn all of the logic and all of like the hard science kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more creativity that goes into building an app, especially around user interface design and user experience design. Something that I feel like a lot of developers don't focus their time on is how does your product make users feel?
Mm.
Because we all can think of an app that we opened it up and went, no, I hate it, and just uninstalled it. And we can all think of an app that went, this was actually really fun to use. It was a calculator, but like it was fun. And so that's the difference between user experience design. And for me, that's where I start. I start planning out the interactions. How am I trying to make a user feel? And then from there, I can drive down into the logic that runs the app.
I kind of want to get your opinion on something here. Because I see like a lot of, I've worked a little bit with UI and UX because my field is more in marketing, albeit I'm not like properly involved. Yeah. It's more like to give my creative opinion on certain things. But, certainly in the context of UX, I understand that like it's always an ongoing thing when you're working with a client. And now there's stuff out there that's directly looking at, okay, like for example, to explain my point, there's a website I came across in one of my old roles called Hotjar or something like that, where it basically tracks your website in real time and provides you with like recordings of where people are clicking on your website and how they're interacting. So, you know, it can basically show you like where most people are going and how they're interacting with your website, which obviously helps you to understand, at least from an aesthetic point of view, what's working in terms of what you're putting on your website, what's putting people off, how easy it is to navigate your website, and so on. So with that in mind, I guess I wanted to kind of know a couple of things in your opinion as it pertains to sort of UI and like why companies like say Facebook and Instagram sort of do these constant redesigns. Like I know that they obviously do them to change every couple of years because it's something you have to do as part of rebranding. But when it comes to actually the usability, like for example, Facebook recently did a redesign, and I noticed that they did a thing where they said, hey, you know, you can switch back to classic for X amount of days. And I kept saying every time I want to switch back, I would leave a review saying, please keep it, please have some sort of a legacy system where I could use the old one, because I hate the redesign. And eventually they just force you to have the new one. So I just wanted to kind of know your opinion maybe on why that happens and just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so when that tends to happen, it's usually not to delight the user. It's usually to improve business metrics. I think the classic example with Facebook was the push to non-time-based feeds.
Okay.
So it was years ago where Facebook default used to show you the newest post first.
Yes.
And everything was chronologically. But they changed that. That hasn't been like that for years. It hasn't even been an option for years. It's all been what they think you want.
Okay.
And so you kind of have to make a business decision, because when you don't put things in chronological order, users use your app a lot longer. And so that's an opportunity to show more ads. Like, I know it's completely counterintuitive, but the data doesn't lie. Like, there's been tons of user studies that when you make this is why Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, all of them have moved away from chronological feeds, because it improves user retention so much. As much as users... Sorry?
Well, what I was going to say is, as a kind of devil's advocate to that, at least with websites like Reddit, you know, you've got the option of categorizing it according to interesting metrics. So you've got new, where you can essentially get chronological, hot as in the most popular, top, the ones that are far rising, whatever, right? So you've got some degree of choice over it. But what you were saying before about how with Facebook, they've moved away from even that. So you don't even have the choice anymore. Like that to me, although like I agree with your point that obviously the stats don't lie, you have to move on that. At the same time, surely not offering a choice is going to eventually push people more and more away from wanting to use that app.
Well, and that's the business the balance needs to figure out. Because with a Facebook like juggernaut, where Facebook doesn't care how you feel using their app. They just don't. They want to know how many ads can we shove in your face in the shortest amount of time. And so when you look at the decision from that perspective, it makes perfect sense why you wouldn't want that. Where Reddit is a lot more community focused. And I think being community focused, you kind of have to keep those options alive to keep fostering a community. And so I think that's why Reddit hasn't done it, despite the fact that they very obviously want to, especially with their recent redesign that I still refuse to use.
I don't understand why everyone hates it so much. I'm the other way around. I started using it last year, and it automatically shows the the new design. Yeah. And I switched back to the old one because I was curious. I had obviously seen Reddit years ago, but it seems like the old design has never changed. I don't know. I kind of prefer the new one. I find it a bit easier to see, navigate. I don't know. Maybe it's like an old person's thing.
And I think that's what it is the old design is for information density. So I think part of the struggle Reddit has had is that Their old design, you could very easily train yourself to just quickly scan through a ton of information because it's all dense, with the headlines, and you can very quickly see information that you want to see. Where with the new design, it's not as dense, but it's more visually pleasing. It's more modern. It's more updated. So I think for new users coming into it, that's obviously the preference. But I've been a Redditor for 7 years. I just, my eyes have the muscle memory of like, okay, that's not an interesting headline, not an interesting headline. Oh, that's interesting for me.
Why do you think that? Obviously, maybe I'm answering my own question here. As you said before, Reddit is community based, so maybe that will explain what I'm going to ask you. But obviously, Reddit has the option and has had the option to switch back between classic and new for seemingly however long the new design's been available, right? But this is not available with like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And I wondered, because I've tweeted about this before. I've said like, hey, I wonder why they won't do like a legacy style switching system. Like I know that would be a lot of work and such, but it probably would please people to be able to have the option of, do you know what I mean? Because like, for example, if I take Facebook's latest redesign, like, obviously I preferred them years ago, but like, you just make do with the newer designs. But one thing that I really didn't like about the new redesign now is how it condenses and makes the Facebook pages a lot more difficult to use and interact with. Because obviously I manage my own page for promotional purposes, and the classic design was much better for that, much more visible and easier to interact with. But this newer design, it's like hassle. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, okay, we're going to move everything everywhere, just to kind of piss you off, and Instagram's done the same thing. And
Yep.
I know why they've done it. They've done it purely to promote Reels and their shop, which no one gives a shit about. Because, with Reels, I mean, we've got TikTok. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You don't need it, right? For the shop, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really go to Instagram to shop. If I'm going to buy some clothes, I'm going to buy them whatever online. If I'm going to buy someone's merch, I'll buy it from their store or from where they're promoting it from. So why the fuck am I going to go on Instagram shop, why do you, basically bringing it back to the question, why do you think there isn't an option and they just kind of force it on you and that's it?
I think there's two big reasons in my view. Part of it is being business driven. They want you to buy stuff through Instagram, and come hell or high water, by God, you will buy something through Instagram. They will force it through you if they have to. They will literally click it for you if they have to. Not quite that extreme, but like that's the mentality I think a lot of that drives a lot of these decisions, is that we want users to use the new messaging app. How can we get users to use the messaging app? We completely break messaging in the normal app and force you to use the new one. And because that's another opportunity for us to learn about you and creep on you. And so like all the decisions like that, there's a very obvious business metric. Something that's not so obvious is the technical component. So Facebook's iOS app is famously large and complicated. They have in the messaging application, the stories feature. They have an entire team of like 10 people working on that. Just that. And that's all they do. Like, it's mind-boggling the amount of resources they have to throw at things like this. And I honestly think creating a legacy system would make their app just break. I think a legacy system would make the app too large and it just collapse under its own weight.
What do you think about... Oh, sorry, go on. You're going to say more.
No, that's...
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to keep asking you questions about this just because I just find this interesting. What do you think about the fact that, like, essentially every app is becoming the same at this point? Because, on Instagram, you've got stories, you've got reels. Facebook, you've got stories. I don't know if they have reels. They might do. Whatever. Essentially, every app is becoming the same. Twitter now has stories, or fleets, as they call them.
LinkedIn has stories.
Yeah, that was weird. But with that one, I kind of thought, I don't think it's that bad of an idea. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, LinkedIn is one of those weird ones where people use it. I don't want to say incorrectly because I think that's the wrong way to put it. But like, LinkedIn is just very different. It's more the formal approach,
Yes.
isn't it? Right.
Yes.
But yet you've got people kind of using it, putting memes on there, putting this, putting that on there, and it's like not like it's not like it's not allowed, but it's kind of like a bit like people often go like, "Why is this here? Why are you putting this here?"
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is becoming increasingly more and more of a social network as opposed to like what it originally was, which was kind of more information sharing and networking.
Yeah.
And it still is that, but at the same time, yeah, adding things and features like stories is kind of a step in I think, in the wrong direction. I kind of got the stories thing with Twitter. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't do it earlier, to be honest.
Yeah.
Twitter, because Twitter's a weird one. I thought Twitter was just going to cease to be, but it seems to just have evolved over the years. So fair play. But I do think there is a bit of an issue here with everything kind of becoming the same. I mean, it makes me think that eventually we're just going to have like just one app, and like all of them are going to like merge into like one, and it won't be different anymore. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So part of the problem is it works. Stories work. People want stories, and they'll interact apps longer if they have stories. And so everyone kind of piles on of we want to increase user attention because we can force more ads down their throat. And so it's not some grand conspiracy to make every app the same, as so much as once one person figures out that it works, everyone wants to do the same thing because they want it to work for them too.
Yep.
And so, I don't think this is exclusive to apps. I think of Target and Walmart in the States. They're basically the same store. They offer the same. There's tons of other stores that offer the very similar experiences with very minimal differences, because the core of what they do works.
Is there a price difference though? Because there's always got to be something that you makes you different.
So I don't actually know Target because I'm actually Canadian,
Okay.
but I believe Target is slightly more expensive than Walmart.
There you go then. Okay.
So it's like slightly more upscale, but like we're talking like a couple of dollars here and there. We're not talking.
Because that at least changes perception, because we've got something similar here in the UK. Like, there's like many different tiers as far as they're pretty much all based on cost and quality, from what I can see. So I mean, because I think Target originally just started as a clothing store, didn't it? But it kind of changed into what it is today. Whereas Walmart has always been just we offer everything for cheap.
Yeah.
Because yay. Because we can.
Yeah. But like, there's a lot of data driven that goes into a store design. Here in Canada, you enter the door, produce is always on the right.
Okay.
That's just how you lay out a store, because that's what increases people buying things in the store. And so, you can always tell what a store's biggest selling item is by what they put at the front.
What do you think is the sort of the future as far as the use of ads in apps and stuff? Because obviously we're seeing more and more ads appearing on timelines, stuff like that. But obviously we were talking about stories just then. Do you think that we're going to start seeing ads over stories? I mean, I know sometimes they do sort of creep in the sense that, when you open up apps, sometimes you get them. But like, what I mean is, do you think we'll get to a point where like every time we want to view someone's story, we have to watch like a 10-second, 15-second ad or something?
They are going to find out the exact number of ads they can show you per unit of time without pissing you off so much that you just leave the app, and they will fine tune that to you personally. So when you start to talk about ads, you have to start talking about the creepy user tracking.
Yeah.
And Apple is going on a giant crusade against that. They've decided that this is a hill they're going to die on. And so something Apple has done is they're calling it a privacy nutrition label, where you have to say exactly how you're tracking a user. And Facebook's is just like, they just clicked everything, every possible option. And
at least they're honest, I suppose.
yeah, at least they kind of have to be, otherwise they get kicked out again.
Yeah.
But so I could go on about how creepy Facebook really is.
Well, please do.
Okay, this is one of my favorite stories.
The creepiness of Facebook. Here we go.
So in the new, do you use an iPhone?
No.
So in the latest release of iPhone, whenever the camera is on, there's a little green dot that appears on the screen to let you know the camera's on.
Okay.
The reason why this is there is because Facebook would turn the camera on, but hide the camera interface behind the rest of the user interface. Okay. And they did it so they could watch how you were viewing the content, and analyzing it. Were you enjoying it? Did you like this content? Did you dislike this content? How much did you like? They were just analyzing the video to no end. And they only got caught when someone found the UI glitched ever so quickly that they saw the camera, and then and then it went to the background. And it's just like, so this is why I say Facebook will find the exact amount of ads they can show you without driving you away, because they will tune it exactly to your preference. Because they do things like this. There's the classic audio listening. You mentioned you want to travel to Bangladesh, and suddenly you start getting ads for flights to Bangladesh, and you're just like, I mentioned that as a joke. Why are you showing me this?
I think the creepiness though is that because obviously if you have your phone close by or listening devices close by, then it's plausible. But there have been times when I've just been thinking about something. You know what I mean? Nothing's been said, nothing's been interacted with. I've just been thinking about something. And suddenly it's been advertised on my fucking computer.
Yeah,
the fuck?
It's creepy how well tuned they can tune algorithms to this.
I think in some ways it's good and in some ways it's bad, because it's like Amazon has been doing this shit for years. That's how the whole recommendation system came in place. And actually it's not even that bad a thing. I think a lot of the time it's useful. I think the problem that people have with it is two things. One, companies like Facebook go overboard with this shit. They just go too far. And it kind of just bewilders you a little bit. It kind of makes you just keep. And I suppose in a way we should be thinking more and more about privacy. But I don't give a fuck. If I'm really concerned about privacy, I'll just fucking leave my phone at home. I won't take anything with me. Do you know what I mean? That's how you go off the grid. You want to go off the grid? Well, go literally off the grid and don't bring anything with you. Easy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's difficult to live in this world these days and interact without having access to these things. It's tricky.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it's tricky. I'm more concerned with things like, how they're trying to phase out using cash, stuff like that. That's what people are more paying attention to.
Absolutely.
But with these adverts, I mean, I think the issue is more, especially with Instagram, what we were talking about before. A lot of people got pissed off about that. I got pissed off about it, and it wasn't so much that they were trying to push that, because I accept they're a business. I've been studying business all my life. I know how it works. I know why it's done. It's just when I come into the app, the first thing I want to do is browse and maybe upload something. Right? I don't want to accidentally press on that fucking Reels feature or the shop feature, and then. Because they must have a lot of data that shows people accidentally pressing on it and then trying to exit it. Surely that would show you hey, maybe we should move this away so that people don't get annoyed by it. Because
But how many people accidentally clicked on it and stayed that wouldn't have clicked on it otherwise? That's the it might be a small percentage, but when you're dealing with, I know, but when you're dealing with millions and millions of people, a third of a percent makes a huge difference.
I just don't know necessarily that they're going to use that though. Like, do you know what I mean? The vast majority of what I've seen and read online suggests that the majority are not happy with this. And the thing is, like,
but they're not unhappy enough to leave.
If their goal is to make money, right?
Yeah.
And people are not spending money in your shop. They're just looking at it. I mean, then is it really working? Because I accept the thing about the Reels thing.
If 0 people were looking at it, were buying from it, they would remove it.
Okay.
But some people are, and they're trying to. Why do people do anything they do? That's
I mean, because I've looked on there. I've looked at the shot, because obviously you got to check these things.
Yeah.
Out. As soon as I saw Reels, I was like, well, this is just basically TikTok. And I kind of thought, from a business perspective, it probably will work because lots of people use Instagram. They'll probably just post on both. And then you can make the argument it's different audiences. Like, I've noticed, actually, funny enough, the same thing. If I post on my stuff on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram, I get different audiences. I get different people turning up. So people use different apps, which is why I've started diversifying and posting content on different places. But when it comes to with that, where it's exactly the same feature, I suppose it's just additional as opposed to actually offering an alternative, because probably most people that are using Instagram are using TikTok as well. It's the same as like Snapchat. Like, I can't believe Snapchat is still a thing. Like, that amazes me. That blows my mind, because essentially everything that made Snapchat special has now been recaptured with stories. I guess no. Hang on, I'll back up a second.
That's not true.
Yeah, I suppose the element of having that kind of private kind of deal with Snapchat still exists. But then you've got things like OnlyFans where you can kind of replicate the same thing. Okay, it's paid, so that's different. But at the same time, what? Okay, if your objective is to have people sort of checking you out in that regard, why wouldn't you just set up an OnlyFans and just get rid of your Snapchat? Like, what would be the point of having the Snapchat? Because I remember a lot of girls were doing that back in the day, and I kind of thought, like, oh, this is genius, this great idea, right? But I remember thinking that they were diverting it to something like a website or something that they were using, right? And then obviously OnlyFans came, and it's like, okay, so everyone's just going here now.
So I think I think a lot of people still like sending self-destructing messages to each other.
Right, yeah. That's a good way.
And I think that's why I think that's why Snapchat's still popular. But yeah, people do use it as a sales funnel to their OnlyFans. Absolutely. Yeah, but like with Instagram and its shop, they only need a very small percentage of people to actually buy something to be profitable. And because they have such a huge audience, they can get those numbers.
Do you think they're not making enough from ad sales then? Or do you think this is just them experimenting?
This is them experimenting.
Okay.
Instagram is absolutely profitable. Facebook as a whole is absolutely profitable. But they always want more. It's never enough.
I remember hearing that Twitter was not profitable. Do you know how true that is?
I don't. I believe it, but I don't know it for a fact.
I was going to say, because a lot of the stuff that I've seen on Facebook, Instagram and stuff, I feel like it's too late to try and do that on Twitter. They kind of missed the boat on that one. You know what I mean? Like, if they would do it now, it would be like the last thing before everyone just goes, fuck Twitter, let's just go elsewhere. But then again, I don't know.
I don't. So I think they're resisting going the Facebook creepiness route, but I think that's the only way they can. That's the only way you can operate a social media of that size.
I think the tricky thing as well is they've kind of painted themselves into a corner, because anything you add to it now, it's not that it. Do you know what? Do you know what I think bothers me about Twitter? Actually, is the fact that they do stuff, but then they do it in an annoying way. So like, what I mean by I'm terrible with my words right now, so I do apologize. But okay, for example, they have the video feature, right? So you can upload a video, but it has to be specific to their format. Which, okay, that's not that new. A lot of platforms are like that, but it's very like finicky, very awkward, right?
Yeah,
And if you do manage to do that, you're restricted to about 2 minutes worth of footage you can have. So that's great if you want to put a clip, but if you want to put anything longer, no way, Jose. Now with Instagram, you've got IGTV, you've got an option. If it's too long, no worries, we'll
yeah.
accommodate you, right? But with Twitter, it's like, nah, we're not going to do that. And I just wonder, like, why do they do this? Is that because of the website's not able to support that, or is it just that they reckon
It's
they're
their brand.
okay?
Twitter, Twitter with the 150 character limit. That's just how they brand
It's
themselves.
280 now, isn't it? I think it went
I
up.
don't know what it is. I don't understand Twitter fundamentally, but that's a whole other conversation. But that's their brand. Is like, if you want to do long form content, go to Tumblr, go to a blog. We're here for quick bits of information. And so I think the 2 minute upload limit is, no, that's just too long for our platform. Go somewhere else. Because if they remove the character limit, or they allow to do that, they lose their differentiating feature of quick information.
I agree. I think, yeah, you're right on that one. Like, it is good. I think it forces people to be more creative as well. Like, I know
Yeah.
when I'm doing my posts on Twitter and I'm promoting myself, it does kind of force me to be a bit more clever with how I promote it. Albeit, most of the time I just have to kind of really put a very short message. But but it is kind of useful if you want to just say something quick, like you said. If you just want to live tweet, like, "Oh, hey, yeah, Mandalorian was great," and then you just leave it at that, then fair play. But then again, funnily enough, everyone kind of does Facebook in the same way, don't they? Like, no one really puts those essay messages anymore, and if they do, they're probably like Brenda, age 50, who's asking, like, I don't know, like the latest on anti-vaxxing rumors and what she should do to battle the latest school stuff or whatever. Just
I think Facebook's having an identity crisis.
Life crisis.
Yeah, I don't think they know. Facebook has kind of ended up being for old people.
Which is ironic, actually, because Facebook originally, if you remember, Facebook in the beginning, not many people will know this. This will be fun for the newer listeners, so listen up. Us old farts were around when basically there used to be this website called MySpace, which still exists, albeit it's not really used, but it still exists. And MySpace used to be the shit. It was fucking awesome, right? And that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, Facebook emerged on the scene. And I remember it back in the day when they first emerged, Facebook to me kind of looked like what LinkedIn was in the beginning. I looked at it and I was like, this is just for old people. This is like business people. Like, why would I want to go on here? And this was back in, I think 2005 was the first time I saw
them. Right around there.
They were made in 2003. They were like testing for 2004. That's when they were called the Facebook. And then by 2005, they were Facebook and beginning to get a bit of a small following. And then somewhere around 2008 was where the switch happened. Loads of people kept leaving MySpace. And it was mainly because the guy that actually ran MySpace and did a lot of the work behind the scenes, Tom was his name, a really cool dude. He was clever. He sold MySpace at the height of its popularity in like 2007. Got out. He now lives his fun life, and this new some company acquired MySpace and essentially fucked it, like just ruined it, and that's why everyone left, right? But then that's the interesting thing with Facebook. They arrived, they were for the old people, and then just everyone kind of went there. And I wonder, is that purely because MySpace was just getting a bit dead and boring? Because the thing is, like, the age demographic thing was still there. And I remember the only reason I actually went to Facebook was because everyone was on Facebook. It wasn't that I wanted to leave MySpace. It was that no one was using MySpace anymore. So it's like, where am I going to interact with my friends kind of thing? So it's interesting to me that you're saying that it's becoming for old people now, because I think that kind of makes it full circle.
So, well, Facebook was originally for college old people.
Right.
Right now it's for, I think it's mostly used by sort of people like 50 plus.
Or fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, to be fair.
Okay, fair.
But that's so I think Facebook is still trying to figure out how to stay relevant. Because Facebook's strategy is just buy everything relevant. Yeah. They bought Instagram, they bought WhatsApp. I mean, so that's their real plan to stay relevant, is buy the new relevant thing, which is coming under antitrust lawsuits now in the States, which might be interesting to watch, but that's a bit of a discussion in itself as well. I think Facebook just has an identity crisis of they don't know where they want to take the platform.
It's tricky to know where to go from here, isn't it? Because in many ways, like, you can do everything on Facebook. Like, I'm not going to say Facebook is bad, because it's not. Like, I mainly use it to keep in touch with friends and family, but like, I don't go there really for entertainment. I sort of use it for memes a little bit. I will say one thing. Shit posting groups on Facebook are excellent. That's one thing for a younger generation that's awesome. I mean, that kind of originated on websites like Reddit and stuff, but like, that's something that kind of exists that's fun on Facebook to be a part of. But like you said, it's more for the older generation. Most people I know that are actually using it all the time are, anyone with kids in a family. Sorry guys. But you're a bit cringe sometimes. I love you, but you're cringe. There's a lot of that, which is acceptable. But it is mainly that demographic. And anyone young, I mean, obviously TikTok is for the young generation. Like I used it for about 5 minutes and I was like, I'm too old for this. I can't use this. And it worries me that, the whole China thing. So fuck this. So I deleted it. That's not because of what the government was saying. I was more kind of just concerned with, like, the fact that they could track anything on your phone. That freaked me out. It was less, I didn't care about them tracking my activity on TikTok, because who gives a fuck? But the fact they could track anything about me at all on my phone, that was like, no, goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, like, it's funny that you say that, because all the rest of them seem to have very clear demographics. Like it kind of seems like Instagram, while it is trying to piss everyone off, at the same time, its demographic is not changing. It's mostly for quite young people. It's I would sort of say somewhere in the region of like 18 to 45. Yeah. Could be more, could be less, but that's mostly, like, you don't see, for example, you don't actually see like a lot of like young people on Instagram. Yeah. Which is good, because I think that'd be a bit weird, inappropriate or something. And they're all on TikTok, which makes sense. They have that platform, here's this platform. So it's good in that sense. But I'm kind of surprised that Facebook has lasted as long as it has. I mean, it's lasted longer than MySpace did. And the weird thing to me about MySpace was that, like, the redesigns annoyed people, but you could still do everything that you wanted to do on MySpace. I think the issue with MySpace was that it kind of like, I remember they changed like literally everything within the course of a year. I remember coming back to the app like a year or two later and it looked completely different. This was back in like 2010, 2009, something like that. And I was like, why would they do that? Like, you're already in a sinking ship. Why would you then try to blow it up? You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
very confusing to me. I just want to get your thoughts on that, like about why MySpace ultimately failed, and also just why does it exist now? I mean, I hear that it's supposedly for musicians in the States as a kind of like kind of ironically like what it was in the very beginning, actually, where it was kind of like a way of finding bands and like being like a networking platform or something.
Yeah, so I don't know who still uses MySpace. That it's a bit of a mystery to me. It's just like who still uses Yahoo Mail. It's still a
Yahoo
thing.
Mail is still a thing.
Yes.
Wow. Next, you're going to tell me
I had to email some.
AOL is like still a thing.
AOL got bought out by Verizon,
Okay,
so
there you
I
go.
think they got amalgamated there. But like, um, I think there's just like people that still want that content. Obviously, obviously their infrastructure is much scaled down than what it used to be, but yeah,
You can't get access to the stuff that you used to be able to get to access to. I mean, like one of the allures of MySpace, which what everyone was, I mean, this is what I have fond memories of, is the fact that it taught you how to use basic HTML coding and
yeah,
editing a website and stuff. And for many people, just getting into design, software design, stuff like that, who were either studying or just playing around with it and eventually got into that industry, it was a very good starter tool. I love the fact that you could just edit, essentially have your own website in a way. I mean, it was just a profile page and it was limited
yeah.
sort of capabilities, but you could, edit the style, the look, have your own music playing. It was for teenagers at the time. It was very expressive, and I don't feel like there's any real websites that exist that replicate the same thing today. I mean, I maybe Tumblr to an extent, but Tumblr isn't what it used to be. It's very different now.
No,
And I can't think of any other website that's similar, to be honest. I mean, it seems like memes have largely just taken over, which is great. I love memes, but at the same time, like, it's not expressive of you. It's just
yeah,
expressive of humor. There seems to be like a lot more anonymity now, I guess. Like if you take Reddit as an example, like
yeah,
there's not actually that many people that like reveal much about themselves, and they often have pseudonyms and stuff. And it seems to be that people are more into privacy, more into hiding behind anonymity and
yeah,
stuff. I find that angle very interesting.
yeah, and yeah, maybe that's what keeps sites like Tumblr and MySpace alive, is wanting that your corner of the internet where you can express yourself. Because like, yeah, you're right. Facebook doesn't really let you do that. Instagram doesn't let you do that. They let you express your life, but they don't let you express your corner of the internet. That's yours.
Who knows? Maybe in the future we'll get something like that.
Yeah.
But one thing actually, as we just sort of wrap that part of it up, I do want to kind of say, like, do you think Facebook is going to last in the long run, or Instagram, etc.? Because I kind of feel like if a competitor was to emerge now that had enough backing and a good enough strategy, I think they could actually give websites like Facebook a run for their money. I don't know that they would overtake. That's a bit of a long shot. But at the same time, if you could offer something that eliminates the more annoying parts of those apps, you probably could do well right now, potentially.
The problem is those annoying points is what makes them money.
But if you're using the website, I mean, because I remember seeing this argument about the Instagram redesign. People were like, "Yo, well, you're still going to use the app, right?" And it's like, yeah, but the reason why people are still going to use the app is because there's not an alternative.
But so part of the problem is that it takes an ungodly amount of money to reach that scale. Like we're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions. And
Man, I don't know, you know. I mean, if we're talking like, okay, let's flip. Take wrestling, for example, right now, professional wrestling. For many, many years, you just had that one company, that WWE company.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years, or within the last couple of years, right, this new American promotion has emerged. They're called AEW. And there were other companies throughout the years that tried to give, you know, a run for the money and compete. But, you know, it was always the same argument of like, oh, well, you know, they just don't have the resources, the money, this, that, and the other. And some of them did have money and they did throw money behind it, but it just didn't work for them. And so it was clear that it was less about the money and more about the strategy. Now, this company, this AEW company that's operating now, they've just sort of celebrated their first year. And the sort of prevailing opinion is that they're doing much better than WWE in many ways. But the stats, the viewership is also really supporting that. Like, for instance, the two television shows that are competing with each other are this AEW TV show on a Wednesday, and then this TV show that WWE is doing on a Wednesday as well. And there's a big difference in the numbers.
Yeah.
Now, taking that back to what we were talking about, I think that while money is important as far as like making certain things possible, I don't know that it's all necessarily about how much money you have. I think it's more about the strategy that you put in place. Like if you have a genuinely good idea that people can relate to and use and will be useful, I think that's maybe more likely to work.
That's why I said at that scale, because infrastructure cost, like Facebook's infrastructure costs, have to be in the hundreds of millions a month. Just hosting all of that data, making it available to that many people is not cheap. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest difficulty is scaling a platform like that.
Right.
So, you know, I listen to the startup community a little bit, and it seems like is not for a lack of people wanting to come up with alternatives. It's nobody has something significantly better.
But okay, this was kind of my point with bringing up the wrestling thing, is it's not about bringing something better. It's more about bringing an alternative. Like that company always says, we're not competing with this company. We're offering an alternative. And that's what's resonating with people. Do you not think that if, you know, they would introduce an app or a service or something or a social media platform that offered something different that isn't currently being offered, could that not be...
So the viral spread that you need for a social media is dependent on people being there. And people being there aren't going to switch if it's not better. If it's not significantly better.
Mm-hmm.
Because so the problem is that it's not, you have to start small and to start small and still be meaningful is actually really, really difficult. And it's not for a lack of people trying to be an alternative. It's the fact that I just think people don't, it's not that they don't want an alternative, it's that they're not willing to invest their time in an alternative.
I think that's a very fair point. What do you think in a hypothetical scenario? I know I'm already asking for a lot here, but in your opinion, like what would it take for people to seriously consider making a switch? Like what in the ideal app, what do you think the ideal app has that could convince people to switch? If, say, a new company was to come along or a new app or something.
So I think you're in a catch-22. I think the biggest thing is going to be privacy features. But the only way you can do that is to be a paid social media, and people aren't willing to pay for social media.
What about if it was really cheap, like
it's been tried.
It worked with WhatsApp. You remember when they first started, it was actually
So
paid, but it was like ridiculous. It was like 50
WhatsApp didn't
cents a
become
year.
popular until it was free, though.
No, that's not true. I remember what I was paying for it,
I didn't.
and it was
So
popular.
I've never paid for WhatsApp.
When did you start using WhatsApp?
When it was a paid app, you could just keep using it for free.
With a free trial?
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been different in Canada then, because you had to pay in the UK. It wasn't a lot though. It was like, this is why I brought it up, because it was a weird concept to me of how you could pay like between 50 pence to like £1 for a year. I was like, that's insane. And I thought about the numbers, like, okay, if 1 million people pay for this once a year, that's money right there. Do you know what I mean? Like it's great.
Yeah.
And it's a one-off, so more people will consider doing it. Do you think it could work? Because that's the thing. If you would set up a social media network now, or an app or something, and you would use that model, but you would make the rest of your money in paid advertising and paid ads.
The moment you start making your money in paid advertising is the moment you get creepy.
Well, you could promote yourself as the brand that doesn't do that as much, that tries to kind of limit that, or that could be a part of your angle, maybe.
But the moment you do that, you have to be creepy.
Well, not necessarily.
Because that's how you make money in advertising, is being creepy. Oh, okay. No advertiser is willing to pay for a non-targeted ad.
You do have to track a little bit. I think we all kind of accept that, really, don't we? If there's paid ads on a site, they have to track us a little bit. It's the degree to which they track us that's the issue. You know what I mean? It's one thing if they're looking at like, he clicked or she clicked on like these keywords, therefore we're going to show them ads towards this. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, why? Do you know what I mean? Like,
but the problem is it's such a slippery slope.
Not if it's clearly defined and you put the rules in place. Like, for example, that thing that you gave earlier about how the app thing with Facebook, the camera thing, that's going too far. If you have clear instructions that, hey, we're not going to do this, and this, but we are going to do this, and this, and you make that really transparent and you stick to it. It's like you said.
I don't think a company would be capable of sticking to it.
They would just see the money and be like, hey, fuck it.
Well, like it's not going to be just money. It's going to be, okay, I need to make 50 more thousand this month to make payroll. Let me just bend it a little.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, yeah, that's spot on. There's so many companies, and it's taking something different. Actually, on a more serious note, that's how it's kind of working. From what I've heard with the COVID-19 crisis, I heard recently. No, I can't obviously say if this is genuine, obviously, or not. But it made sense because a lot of studies that I'd read over the course of this year in like various academic journals and stuff kind of stated that these were professors from around the world and medical professionals saying the numbers that you're seeing for coronavirus are not accurate for the simple reason that they're not being collected in the right way. Yeah. So like if people pass away from, say, I don't know, blood poisoning or they have cancer or something, there was the argument made that the coronavirus speeds that up, and therefore if that person dies, you mark that as COVID positive and therefore they died from COVID, which presents an inaccuracy because it's like, well, where do you draw the line on what you're going to count as a COVID death, right? And when I first heard this, that like, I tended to agree with it because of the fact that, it's coming from academic studies. It's not like a fucking news article on Facebook or something. It's actual like people studying people in the field. So I took it seriously. But at the same time, I was like, things can be faked, things can be exaggerated. And then I heard the reasoning, which is what I wanted to bring up to you, of how, well, why would they fake numbers? Why would they, mark people down as having COVID or test them before they die and then still mark those as COVID deaths, right? The reason why is because in theory, if your hospital needs that, especially if you're in a country where healthcare is privatized, or even if it's public, it doesn't really matter either way. You're still going to need access to equipment, resources on a regular basis, right? And in order to get those, either from the government or from wherever that you source them, you're going to have to justify that you need them.
Yeah.
How do you justify that? Based on the amount of numbers. Oh, our cases are really high, our deaths are really high, therefore we need this. And that's where that comes in. As fucked as it sounds.
That's. I don't personally think it's that.
I hope it's not that either. I'll just say that.
I think it's I think part of the problem is we're marking them as COVID deaths because we don't really know if it was a COVID death or not, and it's more important to track who has had COVID. It's better to lean on the side of marking it as a COVID death rather than marking it as a not COVID death.
I've heard this line of reasoning, yeah. Because
at the end of the day, we just don't know yet. Like, especially when it comes to like cancers and things like that, we just don't know how they interact. There's just has not been enough time to study it and not enough resources to study it because everyone is focused on the vaccine and other scientific research that like we don't like. Could COVID be sexually transmitted? We don't know because nobody has had enough time or energy to actually study it.
How has COVID-19 affected you personally, affected your life?
So I started working from home and I plan to stay that way. And that's really been the biggest adjustment to my life.
So like after this all ends, you reckon like, oh, this is just life now. We're not going back to offices.
Yeah.
Fair
for
play.
Me anyways.
It seems that way for me too. I actually have been unemployed since February. Like my main field is marketing. Obviously I'm really trying hard to make this a living, you know, like YouTube and podcasting and all this, but obviously marketing has paid the bills for a long time. But I came from another country back to England in February. Weird timing. Everything happened and then I settled in and I've been unemployed ever since, but I've been getting more like freelance work.
Yeah.
Now, incidentally, that work is obviously fully remote and freelance, and more of the jobs that I'm applying to, I'm seeing that they're remote based, obviously, like because they have to be. But you know, I've said this for years that I think that so many of these sorts of jobs, IT jobs, freelance jobs, marketing jobs, they can all be done at home. You do not need to be in an office. The most you need maybe is like one meeting every couple of weeks where you just sit in a room because it's a little bit easier to discuss it. But fuck, I mean, we've proved that Zoom meetings can solve a lot of issues. So, you know, I don't know, man. Maybe this is just things have changed for the better.
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of studies that I am absolutely going to be fascinated by, like how much greenhouse gases have been plummeted this year. Is another one that I'm like waiting to come out.
Absolutely. I've had Canadian guests on the show before. Whereabouts in Canada are you from, or where you?
I'm just north of Calgary, Alberta.
Cool. So what's the response been like to the pandemic where you are? Like, how have people sort of reacted? How has it been? What are the restrictions like?
In my opinion, out here, it's not enough.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a saying that Alberta is the Texas of Canada. And it's really kind of true. We're very conservative. We've jumped on the anti-mask train. There were anti-mask demonstrations and protests and anti-restrictions and
a bit more old-fashioned kind of ideology.
Yeah. And so there hasn't, we're finally starting to lock down. We're at an obscene number of cases and we're finally just starting to do it when the rest of the country has been doing it for a month.
Yeah, I was going to say some of the guests I've had from Canada have kind of laid out a very kind of concerning level of restrictions, like quite high in some cases, like stuff as crazy as there was a guy I spoke to who basically said that you were restricted as far as like queuing up in supermarkets and like stuff would be like covered in plastic and you can't like get access to it and stuff, which I kind of, that's crazy. Like that hasn't happened in the UK. We have the queuing thing, but we don't have like things off limits. That's kind of a bit crazy. But,
well, so I actually like that idea.
Okay.
Because so areas that are doing that, they're forcing small businesses to close, non-essential businesses to close. So big players like Costco and Walmart are at an unfair advantage where you can still get the things that you don't need. And so what they're doing is they're saying you can't sell those items because it's an unfair business advantage for you. And we don't want people going in to shop for those items. They should be shopping for groceries. Yeah. They shouldn't be shopping for an iPad.
I suppose, yeah, you can get all of this stuff via Amazon and everything or whatever. Yeah. So it's not really that big a deal. But yeah.
And you can still do those means. You just can't. It's just trying to level the playing field for in-person shopping. Because we don't want people going out to do that right now.
Have you seen any sort of crazy responses, people acting out of town? Obviously, you mentioned anti-maskers and demonstrations, but is there anything that kind of took you by surprise or freaked you out? Or I don't know.
So my sister has a story. So I'm in a small town of like a couple thousand people. And just in the past weeks have finally people started wearing masks.
Oh, wow.
And I know it's been absolutely terrifying. A couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, my sister went into the store and she was wearing a mask and just asked, do you mind asking an employee not wearing a mask? Just move to the side, please, so I can pass safely. Well, masks aren't mandatory. I'll get my manager. I just want to pass safely without interacting with you. Just, yeah. Turned into a whole big incident.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, I don't understand everyone's big deal with wearing a fucking mask. I mean, like, okay, here in Manchester, what I've seen is that when people walk around, mostly they don't wear masks. But when they're indoors, inside a place, 90% of the time they're wearing a mask. The staff will all 100% be wearing a mask. Like that's have to. But people that come in, maybe not every one of them. And don't get me wrong, some of them have like reasons, respiratory problems, whatever. But like, most people kind of operate in that way, and it makes sense. I've walked around outside and not always worn a mask because, as long as the way I see it, as long as you're not packed around people, like if I'm in a city center, I tend to wear it, like because there's more.
Yeah, if you're in a dense area, you should wear it. But like if you're in the middle of a field, you're fine.
Yeah, or like if it's just like a suburb, there's not many people around. Yeah. You're outside. So I think a lot of this is just common sense, but like not wearing one at all is just. I think it's kind of selfish. It's kind of. It's not a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. It's annoying. I have to wear it a lot. Like I do volunteering every week, right? And you have to constantly change the masks.
Yeah.
And but it's really not a big deal. You know what I mean? You just strap a fucking piece of fabric to your face, and that's it. And then it restricts your breathing a little bit. Yeah, but if it's that bad, you just I don't know, go outside for a bit of air, come back in. It's not. It won't kill you. But yeah. I guess it's the whole personal freedoms thing, isn't it? People kind of just get a bit mess with that. Whatever. Anyway, as we sort of bring things to a close for today, I wanted to ask you, do you have any upcoming projects or maybe some final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
So the projects I want to share is, like the blog I was telling you about earlier, whitewhiskeywolf.com
awesome.
Is where I'm building that, as well as you'll be able to see my upcoming podcast at who'syourdev.com. Those are kind of my big projects at the moment.
With the blog, is that something different entirely, or is that related?
That's the building a podcast app.
Okay,
and my written mobile development stuff. The podcast is going to be obviously an audio show.
Excellent.
So that gets its own website.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you very much for being a guest on the show. Best of luck with this
Thank you
app.
for having me.
That's been a pleasure. The pleasure's been mine. Yeah, best of luck with this app. Best of luck with the podcast. Everyone that's listening to the Christian Reeve podcasts, if this is something that's in your realm of interest or something that you do, make sure to go check it out. It sounds very interesting. Or even if, it's not something you're aware of and you just want to learn more, make sure to check it out in January. And once again, thank you very much, Casey.
Thank you.
To everyone listening to the Christian Reeve podcast, I want to say a big thank you for listening. Much more to come. A few podcast guests and last minute shows before the end of the year. And then we will be going full steam ahead into January and the new year. So stay tuned. And until next time, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.